If you should ever leave me, though life would still go.
In case you've been living under a rock these 9 or so years, you may not have noticed a little known series called Bioshock was released throughout. This was made up of 3 games, Bioshock, Bioshock 2 and Bioshock Infinite. All 3 games were highly praised by the press and got multiple awards, and they were just called the best things ever, really. As someone who's been playing games for the past 15 or so years, this may come as a little bit of a shock to you. I have never, ever played Bioshock 1 and 2. Maybe Infinite. But there was kind of odd reasons behind that. But anyways, I recently picked up the Bioshock collection, which contains Bioshock 1 and 2 remasters and Bioshock Infinite, which is kind of not a remaster, but it looks pretty anyway, so they didn't really need to remaster. But that also contains all the DLC, plus Burial at Sea, which is another thing I'm going to be reviewing. So today, I am bringing you the first official review of Total Gaming. Hooray! So today we're going to be reviewing Bioshock 1 and 2 and 3 and Burial at Sea. Bear in mind, there will be mild spoilers. This is just mild. It's not going to give anything away. I'm not going to mention anything big that happens in Bioshock 1 and 2 when I go on to my Infinite review. However, I will mention stuff like there's an underwater city and there's a place in the sky, you know, in Bioshock Infinite. Okay, without further ado, let's dive into the original Bioshock.
Instead, I chose something different. I chose the impossible. I chose Rapture.
Bioshock 1 is set in 1960, and the protagonist, Jack, who you play as, at the start of the game suddenly just gets blown out of the sky for no reason. From the plane crash, Jack then lands on an island where there's a lighthouse, which then takes him suddenly to this underwater city called Rapture. Rapture was an underwater city built by Andrew Ryan, and the purpose of the city was to isolate itself from the real world itself and therefore create its own new world with its own new laws, own new way of looking at things. Just in general, Andrew Ryan, let's put it this way, he didn't like a lot of things that the world stood for, so he wanted his own little playground to have. You spend the majority of the game playing as Jack, trying to figure out what the hell's going on, and you do this with your trusty companion by way of a walkie-talkie called Atlas, or if you want to call it like a speakerphone, I don't know. They've got weird names for everything in this game, so let's just call it walkie-talkie, why not? Atlas then tells you that his family's in danger and he needs you to help him out. From there you get to meet the Big Daddies, which are these mechanical robot-looking things with drills on their hands, the little sisters that the Big Daddies protects, for reasons you'll find out. You'll also see the incredible vistas that are in Bioshock 1. I know this game is 9 years old, and I know it's a remaster, but I can just tell if I played this 9 years ago, which I bloody should have done really in the first place, I can just tell that this was a stunning game when it came out. Bioshock's story is kind of what made Bioshock Bioshock. It's twisted and you don't know exactly where it's going to go, and then it kind of tells you it's going to go this way, but then it's not. It's a very, very good writing is the best way I can put it. You end up going into a massacre, which is Rapture, where you don't know what's going on, and you're begging to find out information of what exactly happens here. And if you look, you will find it, but it doesn't encourage you to look for it. You can do that yourself. There are plenty of audio logs around Rapture where you can find different information about different topics that the main kind of story doesn't cover, but also you can find audio logs that are integrated into the main story, which can add a little bit of depth, but then again, you may never find these audio logs. There's so much to find in Rapture. It's not like one of these collecting games or anything like that. They're just, if you want to find information, just look at the posters, look at what used to be in Rapture.
I'm Atlas, and I aim to keep you alive. Now keep on moving. We're gonna have to get you to higher ground.
You're literally walking into the aftermath of a 10-year-old party just wondering what the fuck happened here, and there's evidence everywhere for you to find. In terms of the main story itself, it is fantastic. I can see after 9 years why this game was so well received for its story. It will keep you wanting to ask more. It will keep you asking questions in your head. They may never get answered, but then again, it'll just give you that carrot on a stick kind of effects. You'll think you'll know something, and then again, it will shut you down completely. I honestly believe that Bioshock 1's story is the thing that kept me going throughout this game. This leads me on to kind of my biggest flaw with the game. And it's not necessarily a flaw, it's more to do with timing. I'm coming at this as a reviewer, as someone who hasn't played this game ever. And it's now 2016. If you were to play Bioshock back in 2006, I'm pretty certain that this would be amazing, and what I'm about to say is just completely redundant. But I do find some of the textures and some of the graphics just look out of date, and the way the game plays is a little bit awkward. This isn't necessarily my fault because I've played Bioshock Infinite and I just know how the different controls setup feel. The controls feel a lot different in Bioshock 1 to Bioshock Infinite. But that's completely understandable given that this is the first game in the series, and having learned from the past games, Bioshock Infinite, and improved on it. I felt it's slightly frustrating when I couldn't use my plasmas as well as my weapons at the same time, but I got over that after about an hour or two play. I kind of took it as more of a challenge really, as you spend most of the time trying to figure out how to kill this enemy, what's the right way to kill them. If I just had plasmids and weapons in my hand at the same time, I really wouldn't think about that really. Each enemy seems like a puzzle, and especially the big daddies, they are tough as fuck, but there are certain ways you can get around them, and there are certain ways you can take them down at the same time. The gunplay in Bioshock isn't particularly strong, but I do think the inclusion of plasmids do mix it up a little, and it is fun to play, but it isn't the most exciting gameplay. However, as I said before, what really drives this game is the story, so that will keep you pushing forward, I promise you this. As an intro to this collection, I think Bioshock 1 is fantastic. I honestly regret, after playing this game in 2016, that I should have played this game way back in 2006, as I think it would have been one of my favourite games of all time. Coming as a person who's played this in 2016 though, it won't be your favourite games of all time, but it will kind of be up there. I think you'll appreciate what this game did for first-person shooters. It combined an amazing story with decent gameplay and an amazing setting that you'll never forget. Rapture is fucking awesome. It's one of the highlights in gaming history, and you'll be really missing out if you never experienced Bioshock 1, the original, by yourself. I want to go back to Rapture. Oh wait, I can. Segue into Bioshock 2. Bioshock 2 is set 2 years before the events of Bioshock 1. The year is 1958 and it's New Year's Eve. And in this game you play as the Big Daddy. You're known as Subject Delta and you're looking after your little sister called Eleanor. At the start of this game, Eleanor gets separated from Subject Delta, aka you, by someone called Sophia Lamb. She ends up shooting you in the head and blah 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 blah. 10 years later you wake up. Lots of things to explore there. Bioshock 2 is a very different game to Bioshock 1, in some ways. For starters, I didn't find the story as gripping or as grabbing, if you will, as Bioshock 1. It was more of a case of, I've been here, done that kind of thing, I know my way around, so it wasn't really that much of an impact.
This is not your daughter. Do you understand? Her name is Eleanor, and she is mine.
Going back to Rapture is really cool, and you get to see new locations, obviously. I can understand why this game didn't get critically accepted as much as the first game. The story just didn't have that carrot on a stick effect that the first game was used to having. All in all, I thought the story was pretty decent, but it's not the most important story in the series, I would say. However, what I did really like about Bioshock 2 was the combat. It was much improved over Bioshock 1. For starters, you get to play as a Big Daddy, and that is fucking great. Your main weapon or your starting weapon is a drill, which you can murder shit out of people with. But you also have different weapons this time. This game felt more like a first-person shooter than, oh my god, I don't know where I am, I'm a little bit scared, like in Bioshock 1. Bioshock 1 is more of an experience, and Bioshock 2 is more of a first-person shooter. I think Bioshock 2 had better set pieces in terms of the gameplay, and the overall shooting was a lot better. This time you could use plasmids and weapons, which is a hell of a lot better than Bioshock 1. So I need to give it props for that. The combat was a lot better in Bioshock 2 than it was in the original game. However, the story wasn't there. It was there, but it wasn't there. Again, graphically, it's pretty much the same looking game. It's a little bit better than the first one, obviously. There's still the weird lunatics around in Bioshock 2. Don't worry, you'll find many of them around. And again, there's side stories that you can follow that give you a bit more information about the world of Rapture, which is also very good. I think of Bioshock 2 as more of a side game to Bioshock 1, really. Not necessarily like an expansion or like a DLC kind of thing. It is a full game after all, but I don't think it builds on anything in terms of the actual world itself and the world of Rapture. However, if you're looking for something that has a better combat experience, and therefore if you're playing this for 8 hours, you're going to enjoy those 8 hours playing the actual game itself, then Bioshock 2 is a lot better than Bioshock 1 in terms of that. Anyways, moving on to number 3 in the series of Bioshock Infinite.
Booker, are you afraid of God?
No. But I'm afraid of you.
Where to begin with Bioshock Infinite? Bioshock Infinite just built on the foundations of Bioshock 1 and 2 and just made everything good. Like, I found the gameplay to be good. I found the story to be good. The story from 1, the combat in 2, all mixed into this massive game. It's fantastic setting, this brilliant story and amazing writing. And of course, maybe if I played Bioshock 1 before Infinite, let's not mention that again, but maybe if I did, I may have liked Bioshock 1 more. Hindsight is a wonderful thing, but to be honest, I just found Infinite a lot more entertaining. In Bioshock Infinite, you play as Booker DeWitt. You start the game in the middle of the ocean with 2 people rowing a boat towards what looks to be a lighthouse. Aha, another one. With the simple task of bring us the girl and wipe away the debt. Just when you think you're going back to Rapture, whoops, you're heading towards Columbia, which is now another city, but up in the sky. Like Rapture, Columbia is an amazing place to explore. There's so much little detail that they've put into this world that you just want to find out everything about it. Whether it be their views on people or how they go about their day, and I mean, you'll find that all later, and some of it is real fucked up. But just when you think that Columbia is completely different to Rapture, all hell will break loose, and then you realize that's not. Another new thing for Bioshock is that throughout most of the game, you'll have a partner called Elizabeth, and she is awesome.
Hey! Knock it off! Stop it! Will you stop it? Not here to hurt you.
Who are you?
My name is DeWitt. I'm a friend. I come to get you out of here.
Get away! Are you real?
When you look at people in video games in the past that have been like companions, you think of someone like Tails in Sonic, who's just an annoying little shit that gets in the way and dies every time. In Bioshock, Elizabeth is complete opposite of that. She's interesting, you want to know more about her, she's wonderful, she's like something out of a Disney book.
Hey, Miss Elizabeth.
Hello! Oh, this is wonderful! Oh, come dance with me, Mr. DeWitt.
I don't dance. Come on, let's go.
Why? What could be better than this?
In terms of the story overall, Bioshock Infinite is one of the craziest stories you'll ever have. Just ever in a video game. Just like Bioshock 1, it kind of turns it up to about 11, if I'm being honest, and it just goes in all manner of directions. Incredibly great writing that they've done with this game. It's just so... it feels like every game has been a genuine improvement, and Bioshock Infinite is just fantastic. Just... the way, the pacing of this story. I do admit in the middle of the game it gets a little bit drabby and it can drag on a little bit, but from the start to the finish, if overall the story of this game is fantastic. It is amazing. It's one of the best stories I've ever had in a video game ever. And that's saying something. Again, I've played games for over 15 years. I've played mostly story games. I'm addicted to story-based games, and Bioshock Infinite Story is one of the best I've ever played. It's mysterious, it's gripping, it's weird in some places, but you just want to keep playing. It's one of the best adventures I've ever had in a video game. That's saying something. Also, something that helps is the characters. Booker and Elizabeth together are a fantastic pairing. Troy Baker, who plays Booker, does a really, really good job. Even though he doesn't have that many lines. I mean, he has lines. He has like an average amount of lines for a video game character. But the main star of the show is Elizabeth, who's played by Courtney Draper. You just tell that the 2 voice actors has so much fun being these characters and being together. They just have such real, great chemistry together. And I know it's a video game, game, and it's hard to describe that, but they just do. The gameplay is obviously a big one, because that seems to be the factor that I'm getting at with Bioshock. The gameplay and the gunplay and everything like that seems to be the letdown slightly in the first two games. In Bioshock Infinite is vastly improved. However, it does still feel a bit weak. Compared to other first-person shooters that you play nowadays, it does still feel a bit weak. However, the addition of the grappling hook, or the spinning hook thingy that Booker gets, is really good. You can go on zip lines, you can jump off zip lines and hit people at the ground, and adds just a little bit more depth to the game. If it didn't have that grappling hook, I would say that the gameplay was really boring. Of course, you have plasmids, or in this case they call them vigors in Colombia, as well as using the weapon at the same time. You also have Elizabeth, who's really useful in battle. She'll go around trying to find stuff like ammo or health for you when you need it, really, during battle. This makes her not this kind of character that's just running away every time there's a gunfight or something. She actually gets involved, which is really, really good. You know, there's actual purpose to this character, you know, she's not just this girl who just runs away from a fight. She wants to get stuck in. Bioshock Infinite is, simply put, one of the best games I have ever played. It's let down slightly by average to good gameplay, but that's not what Bioshock is. Bioshock is the adventure. It's the amazing time you have with characters. Infinite was built on 1 and 2, and it just improved so much with Infinite. The story is crazy, yet it is incredible. It's one of the best stories you'll have in a video game in the last 10 or so years. Simply put, if you were to play one Bioshock game, I would highly recommend Infinite. It is my favourite Bioshock of all time. Cool. With that out of the way, let's move on to Burial at Sea, the DLC for Infinite.
We're closed.
You don't look the sort who can afford to turn down legitimate work.
What do you want?
How about we start with a light?
Okay, this is going to be tricky because Burial at Sea is based on kind of the events of Bioshock Infinite. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I will briefly explain the concept of each episode. Episode 1 is roughly around 2 to 3 hours, and episode 2 is a bit longer, I'd say about 3 to 4, maybe 5 hours, depending how you play it. In Burial at Sea, you play as Booker DeWitt, and you still have Elizabeth. However, it's in a different timeline. They mix it up slightly. Instead of having both of you in Colombia, Booker is now a private investigator, and Elizabeth is a worried person who comes in to tell you that a girl's been missing called Sally. The best way to describe Burial at Sea is to explain each episode, because they are quite different. Episode 1 sees you back in Rapture. We get to see how Rapture was before all the chaos happened, and it's really cool because it's part of Rapture you've never seen before, and it's well worth exploring because you'll see a bunch of things that you go, oh yeah, I remember that from Bioshock 1, that's pretty cool, and all that kind of thing. Episode 1 is more of the normal Bioshock you were used to in Bioshock Infinite. Let's put it that way. It's kind of that DLC. However, when you get to episode 2, it becomes a completely different game. For reasons I can't really describe, not to give away spoilers or anything like that. However, when you play episode 2, it is a completely different game to episode 1, even Bioshock Infinite. I'm not going to spoil it because it will surprise you how different it is. Just play it. it's just play it. But just think of it like Bioshock, but kind of flipped up on its head. Again and again. Overall, the story for Burial at Sea, it was a weird one because I didn't really know what Burial at Sea was, and I heard of it when I finished Bioshock Infinite a couple of years ago, but I never really got into it. Burial at Sea ties up the whole series. It puts a ribbon on everything. It's a wonderful DLC package. Like, it is fantastic. I may be repeating myself with what I said about Infinite, but it's such a different thing to Infinite. I can't really explain it without spoiling it, but it is a different game to Infinite in some way. You may think that there's nothing left to tie up or anything after you've played Infinite, but it answers so many questions that you didn't really think to ask yourself when you finished all the Bioshocks, and I think it's just the perfect game to play after all those 3 games. It's a nice, refreshing, different experience to the other Bioshocks. I had so much fun playing Burial at Sea. It surprised me so much. they just continue this on in Burial at Sea. It is Bioshock Infinite in a different way. And I know that sounds crazy, because Bioshock Infinite is a crazy game, but it's just turned up on its head yet again. And that is all 3 Bioshock games reviewed plus Burial at Sea. Overall, I think the Bioshock collection is a must-buy. Even though Bioshock 1 and 2 feel a little outdated, they are still really enjoyable games. And Bioshock Infinite and Burial at Sea are just essential games. You must play these games. If you're looking for story, this is the best place to go. If you're looking for gameplay, it's alright, it's not bad, it's average to good in some places. I'm not going to say any more than that. If you did like the video, please leave a like. Also subscribe to the channel if you want to see more reviews, more Bioshock things. We will be doing a Bioshock spoiler talk very, very soon on the channel, so subscribe for that. Make sure you play all the games and then listen to that spoiler talk as we talk about every little nook and cranny about Bioshock. Believe me, there's going to be a lot of bloody talking in this. So, anyways, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.